I wanted to put up one more letter from Jack Hartsfield, and maybe people will understand if this is ever over and uh, my story and some other people's story told. This was one of the decent people in the world. I will always believe that, and very much a gentleman. Jack Hartsfield, and again, I'm going to say that he was a reporter, but he was FBI undercover as a reporter. I know that. Whether this will go up, I had one knocked off one. Well, I don't know if that was a reason or not. But anyway, he's deceased a couple of years ago. He's a couple of years older than me, so I wonder how much longer I have, you know. I'm going to read it just this way. He has always sent letters to me, and he's told me to use them. Just like the Hustler magazine, the endorsement, that it gives support to me because my life has been so much hell and people don't like to believe it happens to anybody. And with me, the situation is some of it's been hate crimes. You better believe it to me because of who I am. And, anyway. Sal Vizzini came to Roanoke. Maybe I better turn it around. I don't know. I think, no, probably reading this would be better this way. I will show my dad's picture in case there's anybody that don't know if this who I am. I'm Victoria II, heir to the British Crown, legal. Kidnapped at 41, brought to Moulton, Alabama, and given another name. This is my father, Edward VIII. Who never married Wallace Simpson. He married Claudia Ruth O'Keefe from Madison, Wisconsin, school teacher, sister to Georgia O'Keefe. I wrote a book about mind control, Tesla Files, how you can cure an illness or create one. And it gets into telling the truth about some people, and I thought that's why they tried to kill me more than once. Had a letter from the FBI, June the 23rd, 79. They almost killed me again, April Fool Day, and that one was a real takedown, ain't just about, and I wonder if I'm going to make it now, after all these years. Anyway, I found out about being kidnapped in 83 when I was flown out to Larry Flint's home. He had been shot by a program shooter while I was doing the book. I lived in Marietta, and he was shot in Lawrenceville. And he's paralyzed from the neck down. So I'm getting a special election to replace one of the doctors I'd written about, and I'm flown out to his home in 83 during the election, and he did an editorial in Hustler, and I usually put it up, but I think he gave it like Jack here has it. By the way, Jack used to go out there. The FBI run Hustler, or they did. I do want to read this because he was such a nice person. He saved my life there in 1980. And I worked for the district attorney, and after they'd almost killed me, and then it didn't stop because the woman who was mother of the twins, Lana Dempsey, thought if the book were published, if I got it published, then people would start to know the truth that I'd been kidnapped and that she'd murdered her twins, Peggy and Carl. They gave me Peggy's name in 1941 when they brought me there. And she would go to the gas chamber, and the rest of the family had covered it up. So there you go. I'm going to read this because Sal Vizzini was sent there too, to Huntsville, during the same time in late 1980. For the reason of helping me, and I know that because I ran. There's other reasons I know other than just his coming there. Anyway, this is Jack, and he sent me other letters to put up, and this is to Sal. He was a former FBI agent, Salvador Vizzini, and he had a book, a small one, but I got a hold of it way back then, and it said if he told all he knew, he would be killed. Well, now he's sent over his police chief, in 1980 when I was almost killed, and I met Jack then. He saved my life. Okay, I'm going to read this. He deliberately sent me a copy to Sal, and I'm going to read it to you. It's been some time now since I shoved an epistle in your direction, but you've been weighing heavily on my mind in recent weeks, and I do hope you're reaching some peace over your divorce dilemma and your health is improving. Don't know why I've had you on my mind so much as of late, but I have learned to accept intuitive nudges if that's what they are. What the hell? It's keeping my mind active. No Alzheimer's here. I took the test. I found my car in the shopping center parking lot the first time I tried to find it this week. I'm told that's a good sign. The bad sign would have been if I left the shopping center and forgot altogether that I'd ever had a car. So maybe my epistle was prompted simply by the sands of times slowly shifting in the hourglass. Times and conditions do change, you know. I doubt if either of us would have believed 50 years ago, even 20, that a bid for the Democratic presidential nominee would come down to a choice between a black man or a woman. Obama may indeed be the miracle man. Well, he's part of the Illuminati. They just published a list, and he's way up there. All the presidents have been. Hopefully, well, they have been. Okay, I'm going to skip down here a little bit. Okay, he says, I had a visitor in my office a week or so ago. The guy said he'd been in over 40 countries in his career and had never before publicly proclaimed a political party preference. But this time he's disgusted with the current Bush administration to a point he's embarrassed for the nation. I told my visitor I understood what he was saying, nothing that I experienced a metamorphosis to progress to an independent political status myself, but that if it's a big if Obama were elected, it would improve the U.S. image in much of the world. By the way, I talked briefly with Hal Bryant a few weeks back, just chit-chat. And the 80s are pretty well calmed down. Told me some time ago that Huntsville's wild and wicked ways of the 70s and 80s are pretty well calmed down these days. I hope so. Maybe so. Maybe not. I still kind of show me mentality and don't just tell me if even if I wasn't born in Missouri. Interesting, though, that it's public knowledge, even in print these days, that Huntsville now has a sizable bastion of counterintelligence gurus. Well, this is NASA, so there's no need to go on. You can understand. Doesn't seem possible that it's been 29 years since I first met you in South Miami. Well, he talks about the gun running and all that, missiles from arsenal storage, gun runnings, espionage. That's NASA, Huntsville, Alabama. And a nonchalant attitude for news executives at the Huntsville Times, preferring to look the other way, disgusted me. Even after I was run out of town on a rail, fired from the newspaper, divorced, lost my home, and what was left of my journalistic reputation. It took more time to decipher a lot of links, among them leading to the Iran-Contra. He goes on about that. I really wanted to get down to this. He says, I confess I did try to push buttons with all this stuff and about the mind control murders, too. And he was working for the Huntsville Times, and they fired him, and then when he died, he had gone back there a few years ago. So they had somebody else bought out the Times. Okay, I confess I did try to push buttons with the Boston Globe, Miami Herald, Newsday, Atlanta Journal, Los Angeles Times, and the Daily Oklahoman and Nashville Banner, Birmingham News, etc., etc. Now, do you suppose that was why I was fired from the sterling bastion of journalistic integrity, the Huntsville Times? Since I was vested at the Huntsville Times, I currently received the magnanimously amount of $143 a month for my 15-year effort at the paper, however reluctant they are to pay even that. Jonathan Winter, Winer, testified before a Senate committee in 2003 on the international spiderweb of money laundering, etc. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think he's talking about truth is there, symbolic of truth. That's how was my intent from the very beginning regarding what was happening in Huntsville at the time of your arrival as police chief. Well, they were trying to kill me then. I like sunlight too. I find it even odd until this day that only a few months ago I was told by a friend of Nick DeLucci here in Southern California that the Huntsville I knew never existed, not even in the era when I was there, and not today. That if I ever tried writing a book on the subject, it'd have to be fiction. Are we still in the national security theme mode, the same thing that led to the Iran-Contra? Oh, here we go here. DeLucia, incidentally, was the guy who introduced me to his friend Don Barrington, the Peter Abbott lookalike. Peter Abbott was in, when I worked at the DA, he had so many aliases, but he's going to mention Susan Boda here if I can get this up. I got enough time left. Peter Abbott, well, like I say, he had so many aliases. Susan Boda came to me, and she had testified in Pensacola, Florida, I believe she said, for 2020. And she wanted me to watch it with her, and she said, I don't know whose side I'm on when I testified. But anyway, it came on, and the Hells Angels came on first. We're waiting for Susan. The Hells Angel had a rerun suddenly. No Susan. It was a rerun of the first half. So they cut her off. Anyway, she had worked as a professor at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And that's another story I started to put up yesterday, and I didn't. Susan was a friend of Jack Hartsfield, and he's telling this. And this gets into the district attorney that replaced the district attorney I worked for, Fred Simpson. He represented Susan, and it was something about, this was just part of it, about her having a ring given to her that was from outer space. Well, now, Jack's nephew, I believe it was his nephew, his close relation is Hank Hartsfield. He was commander of the couple of the space shuttles. Okay. Now then, Peter Abbott, the real Peter Abbott, was in the federal protection witness in Huntsville who was ousted by Susan Boda, a.k.a. Thompson and Glenn Brooks. Susan now resides in a convalescent home in Resta, California. Her son, John Thompson, was Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriff, murdered a number of years ago, and not a mile from where I currently live, and 6 houses from a friend of mine today. At my request, DeLucci did look at the circumstances of John Thompson's murder, including the lengthy manuscript of the trial of the guy who shot John to death before being sent off to the state pokey for years for manslaughter. DeLucci would only tell me not to ask more questions about John Thompson's murder because even the trial and verdict smelled to high heaven. Odd indeed, he said. And for DeLucci's own reasons, which he would not explain, he told me I shouldn't trust Susan Boda, a.k.a. Thompson. I agree there. and that she is passing on information about discussions with me regarding these days back in Huntsville. I do recall you once said something similar about Susan's poor reputation in there somewhere when we first met. And Barrington, for whatever reason, does indeed seem to know a lot about northern Alabama and beyond the horizons. Well, let's see. John Winter had the right idea, how apparently it hasn't as yet applied to my efforts. Jack says, I've never been a particularly religious man, not a Bible thumper or one to roar through the church door at every opportunity, but there has to be a reason why I remain motivated to seek the sunlight, or the truth is what he means, for all these years. Every man has to believe he had a purpose in life, that he contributed something, that while he may have stumbled, he got up and kept trying, that he made a difference, however humble, however small. One marches to the beat of the drum he hears. God only knows why. Take care. And that was Jack.